Hello and welcome back to SENDit, the show where we explore how different brains think, work and thrive. So today we're going to talk about dopamine, one of the most misunderstood but most important chemicals in the neurodivergent brain. So if you've ever struggled with starting tasks, or you only work under pressure, you need that background noise to focus, you felt stuck but wanted to act, bounce between tasks or hyper-focused for hours, then to be honest, dopamine is likely part of that story. So we are going to look today at why it matters, what it actually is, why neurodivergent brains, especially the ADHD brains, often struggle with it, and most importantly, how can we use dopamine instead of fighting it in life and in the workplace? And we're also going to recap some key ideas from previous Brains at Work episode, including looking at motivation, executive functions, burnout and task paralysis, because dopamine sits right at the centre of them all. So by the end of this episode, we're hoping that you're going to understand exactly what dopamine does, why it's often misunderstood, and how it impacts autism, ADHD and other neurodivergent profiles, the science behind motivation and reward, and side effects of low dopamine.
So let's start to look at the basics. So what is dopamine? It is a neurotransmitter that means it's a chemical message to the brain, and it's often called the reward chemical, but that isn't quite right. So dopamine is actually described as the motivation and anticipation neurotransmitter. It's the brain chemical that helps you start tasks, stay focused, feel motivated, experience interest and anticipate rewards. It also helps you switch between tasks. So in simple terms, dopamine is what helps you do things.
Yeah, and without enough dopamine, tasks start to feel impossible and motivation disappears. There's so much that people struggle with that you get that difficult focus, time blindness, and you're seeking the stimulation. And this is where neurodivergency becomes really, really important. So as part of my research into this episode, I was looking at a study that was published in 2012, and this was in the Journal of Neuroscience, and it found that individuals with higher dopamine levels were more willing to exert mental effort even when tasks were difficult.
So this is critical because it means that dopamine isn't just about pleasure, it's about effort, and without enough dopamine, effort feels heavier. So this is why neurodivergent people often say, I know it's important, but I can't start. They are lacking understanding, they're lacking the dopamine activation. So, Steph, we talk about dopamine a lot.
Yeah.
It's something that you're really aware of. So what are some of the ways that you might dopamine seek?
So I do this all the time. I'm not going to lie, I'm a doom scroller on my phone. I absolutely love sitting and looking at reels and memes.
Gosh, I've not even thought of that.
And that is my dopamine.
Right,
and so many people I speak to are like, oh, do you know what? I've deleted all those apps. I feel they're just not productive for me. I love to sit and scroll, and I know what I'm doing, and I know it causes brain rot and everything like that. But actually, that's my little kind of stimulant way. And they do say that people with ADHD spend a lot of time on electricals, like kids who get the iPad rage and things like that, because it is that instant dopamine fix, playing a daft little game, watching the reels, me and my Duolingo.
Yes.
That's my main seeking way. Or another one, actually, not saying I have this one, but a lot of ADHDers, alcohol. It becomes something that people are seeking. You get a lot more of a dopamine fix with it, especially if you're ADHD. So sticking with some of the research that I've been looking at, you know, there's been some brain imaging studies that show ADHD brains have differences in how the dopamine is transported and the receptor availability. So a major study that was led by Nora Volko, it was in the National Institute on Drug Abuse, and it used PET scans to compare ADHD and non-ADHD adults, and they found the reduced dopamine activity in reward and motivation pathways in ADHD brains. So these areas control things like motivation, reward, effort, interest and attention. And I think this explains a common ADHD experience, as the study found that ADHD brains have, I think it was something like up to 30% lower dopamine activity in these reward circuits. So we can share a bit of an example on this. We'll have a person, and let's just say he's called Tom.
Yeah.
Tom works in project management.
Yeah.
He's bright, he's experienced, he's capable, but he notices something confusing. He can plan a complex product, launch it in 2 hours, but he's replying to 5 emails, takes all morning. And he delays the emails, he checks his Slack, he organises folders, he gets a coffee. He isn't avoiding work, but he's searching for dopamine.
Gosh, this sounds so familiar.
Yeah. And it's because it's lower. So the product launch is complex, it's interesting, it's challenging, it's stimulating. He's getting so much for that. Then there's the emails, that's predictability. It's low urgency, it's low reward, it's something that's done all the time, it's not exciting, he's not getting that chemical release from it. So the ADHD brain automatically moves towards the dopamine-rich tasks. It isn't the laziness, it means that the brain requires more stimulation to activate motivation. And this explains why people with ADHD often work best under pressure, because they need that urgency and they struggle with the boring admin. They like to get that boost and they get it very, very quickly.
Dopamine also affects autism, with motivation tied to interest, and reduced motivation for non-interest tasks, making difficult switching tasks. So autistic individuals often experience interest-based neurosystems. So motivation is deeply tied to meaningful engagement. Research published in the Molecular Autism suggests autistic brains may process reward differently, particularly in social rewards. So, however, interest-based reward remains strong. So that links back to kind of what we were talking about with hyperfocused and those special interest topics.
It does.
So if we look at another example, I'm going to call her Judy. So Judy's autistic and she works in data analytics. When you're working on pattern analysis, she can focus for 6 hours straight. But when asked to switch tasks quickly, she feels stuck. Not because she can't do the task, but because the dopamine shift hasn't happened yet. So switching that task requires dopamine reset and a cognitive re-engagement. There's an energy shift without that. So transitioning feels really, really difficult. This is often misunderstood as someone being rigid in their patterns, but actually it's the dopamine continuity.
Yeah, and I really like hearing it from the autistic side, because obviously I know it from the ADHD side.
Yeah.
And I didn't realise that it was different for everyone. I kind of just felt that everyone had dopamine, but ADHD processed it differently.
Yeah.
But then people who are autistic have it differently. So how do you feel that it links to dyslexia?
So that's a really, really good question. And I have to say, like, just with you saying that, when we started looking into this episode, I very clearly said, it's dopamine is really new to me. It's not something that I've recognised in myself. But when you're giving those different examples earlier, I can see that I do it.
Yeah.
But it's a really good question around the dyslexia. Dopamine is basically it's a chemical messenger in the brain. So it plays a really big role in things like motivation, attention, learning, and how reward feels. So dyslexia in itself is a language-based learning difference, but dopamine can affect how dyslexia feels day to day.
Right, so it's not causing dyslexia, but it influences the experience.
Exactly. So one of the biggest areas is attention and focus. So dopamine helps the brain stay alert and engaged. Many people with dyslexia find it hard to maintain focus, especially when they're reading or writing for long periods. If dopamine levels are lower or not working efficiently, concentration can drop off really quickly, and mental fatigue can kick in even sooner. Reading can feel more effortful, even when someone is bright and capable, and with that extra effort, it can be really exhausting.
I can imagine that completely. So dopamine is closely linked to motivation and reward as well. So I suppose for many people with dyslexia, reading is slower and takes more effort, so it doesn't always feel rewarding to you. And the brain just isn't giving the same, this feels good, let's keep going with it signal. And I suppose for you, it can probably look like avoidance from the outside.
Exactly, and that's such an important point. It's not a lack of ability or effort. Sometimes it's the effort to reward balance feels really unfair. So over time, that can knock confidence. It can make people feel disengaged, especially if they've had negative experiences around reading and learning.
Yeah, so this is where encouragement really matters then.
Absolutely. So positive feedback, noticing progress, success-based learning approaches make a huge difference. When people feel supported and see their effort is recognised, dopamine response improves and learning feels more manageable.
So what about learning itself then? How does dopamine fit in there?
So dopamine helps the brain strengthen connections when something new is being learned. So for someone with dyslexia, things like letter-sounding links often need more repetition. If learning doesn't feel engaging or rewarding, progress can be slower.
So multisensory learning then is really, really powerful. I suppose when learning involves seeing, hearing, saying and moving, it becomes a lot more engaging. That engagement boosts the dopamine, which I suppose is going to help the memory and the learning.
Exactly.
And it's not about forcing more practice and making learning work with the brain. I suppose it's not that, that when we used to do that, look and
yes.
do, look and do, look and do. And it used to just be, this has got to be memory. Whereas at least here, there's more involvement, isn't there, with that multisensory learning?
So when learning feels safe, encouraging and engaging people with dyslexia are far more likely to thrive.
Yeah, I can completely get that. And I think as we're looking at dopamine and at work, low dopamine environments, because obviously, like we've just said with ADHD and dyslexia, you've got to keep that going. I can find if I'm in a meeting and it's not engaging enough, you zone out and you force yourself back in. And obviously low dopamine environments come with those long meetings, the repetitive tasks, the unclear deadline, no feedback, low autonomy, heavy admin, and lots of jobs are like that and have to be like that. But these environments obviously reduce that motivation for people with neurodivergency.
Yeah, absolutely. And then on the other hand, we've got high dopamine environments as well. So they might be fast-paced, they might be problem-solving, they might be creative, you might have autonomy, really clear deadlines, collaboration, and kind of visible progress so you can see how you're moving. Sometimes it's really, really purpose-driven work. This is why many neurodivergent people thrive in work environments that might be startups or tech companies or creative roles.
Yeah, it's finding the role, I suppose, that works best for you, because not every environment can be like that. Not every job, you can't make it perfect. But I think, again, it brings us always nicely onto our little toolkit, doesn't it? And finding what can we do to make it work for us, what can we do to get that boost, because it is a quick win, isn't it? It's just doing things that we can to support. So one that I do a lot of is finding that interest-based tasking, so attaching things to the boring tasks. So I love having an audio book on in the background that's just, even though I'm not quite listening to it sometimes, it's nice to have it on music. That is a great one, just playing away so you can sing along while you're doing generally your low admin ones. I would say your emails and things are the best for that. Timers, we've discussed before. Right, here's a 10-minute timer. I'm going to get this much done in this amount of time. Body doubling is probably my favourite. Ringing somebody, having them on in the background, things like that. Rewards, and definitely movement breaks. Right, I'm going to have 15 minutes, then I'm going to have a quick movement break, make a cup of tea, come back.
But that's like your reward as well, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if you're having a nice chocolate bar with your cup of tea.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So the one that I've got here is dopamine stacking. So, and I hadn't realised that this was an actual thing, but I do it all the time. So you might combine your coffee and a task, or music and admin, or walking and calls, or I mean, I do this all the time, putting a podcast on when I'm doing my chores, when I'm doing the cleaning around the house. I'm constantly listening to a podcast, but I don't think I'd ever kind of clicked that I was linking my boring tasks to actually something else.
Yeah, so they link quite well then, don't they? It's making sure it's keeping you on that focus.
Yeah, exactly.
One I've definitely got to do, because I know I am terrible at it, is breaking my activities and tasks into more manageable chunks, because if something feels too big, I just don't know where to start. So
with that then, sorry, I know I'm like jumping in, but do you have your tick list? Doesn't that give you an absolute kind of buzz?
I love it. I have a tick list that I use constantly, and I break it into more manageable chunks, and then say if I add something else to my tick list, or I've done another task, I add it to the tick list and then I cross it out because it's a bit more of a dopamine fix. Yeah, but it is breaking it down. So instead of write that report, right, what am I going to do first? This little bit, the title and the blurb, add some bullet points, put a bit of a plan in, and it's just building it step by step, but it does feel so much more manageable.
Absolutely. Another one is about using urgency, but doing it safely. So setting yourself timers. I've got timer apps on my phone, and I'll set myself like focused time and have that buzzer going off when I get to the end of it. Fake deadlines, I really need that. Sprint work is another one as well, so you've got those short bursts of work that really help too.
I think the fake deadlines is a good one, but when I know the fake deadlines...
It doesn't work, does it?
Yeah, sometimes I've got to say, right, I've got this bit of time and I want it done, but however, I've got a bit more.
Yeah.
So it's figuring out which ones fit, doesn't it? For me as well, I need a lot of visual tracking, like we've said about the checklists, adding extra things on. Progress bars, so knowing exactly what they are, what I need, what I want. So I like a plan that I can stick to. Being ADHD, I don't stick to the plan, but it's knowing what actually needs doing, what can be moved across. It's almost like your Eisenhower matrix.
Yeah.
So looking at what's important, what needs doing right now, what's urgent, but what's important and not urgent. Getting rid of your distractions. What am I eliminating completely off?
Absolutely.
Sticky notes, I have different colours for everything. So these are what I need doing, these are what I need to remember. Task apps is another one I love, but it's making sure you've got them all in the right place. Really, really enjoy Trello because it has...
I was just going to say, Trello's a great one for that, isn't it?
Yeah, because it's got multi-boards, different pages. We can collaborate on each other's. I do like that. And I think, again, bit of a dopamine boost. You're seeing that progression. It's a boost. It keeps you going.
Another one, and Steph's already mentioned it as well, is body doubling. This is such a great tool, and I think it's something that's so easy to do as well. So you could work with a co-worker or a friend. There are virtual rooms that you can join, co-working spaces. It all increases dopamine because it's dopamine through accountability.
Yeah, body doubling is just my favourite. I even do it outside of the workplace. I like to have, say, someone talking to me while I'm cooking, or even to put the washing in, because I'm a nightmare for just putting it and ignoring it. My husband has to hang the washing out with me because it won't get done. It'll get washed 3 times in a row over the next couple of days. But movement breaks especially is a big one for me. I say it all the time, don't I? Movement increases dopamine. Walking, stretching, fidgeting, you know, those new standing desks.
Oh, amazing.
I think I've seen so many for sale where you've got your standing desk and the walking pad underneath. And that really gets it.
I don't know whether I could do the walking pad as well. I think I'd be like off to one side.
Maybe. It's just like a treadmill really, isn't it? It just keeps you going. No. Maybe don't try that one in case you knock everything off. But it is the movement break. I constantly fidget. I'm even fiddling with my necklace and jewellery now, but it's making sure that you do take the breaks because it builds up massively and then you'll just have a little mini explosion.
So then there are workplace adjustments as well that you can look at. So things like flexible deadlines, having really clear priorities, that's really helpful for me because if something new comes in, sometimes I struggle as to where it should fit in priority-wise. Short meetings, again, written instructions, keep on coming back to that one. Having task variety as well, again, that's really important for me. If I'm doing the same thing over and over and over again, I'm completely lost, if I'm completely honest. And then quiet focus time, whatever that looks like for you, I think that's really, really important as well.
And I've noticed with the shorter meetings, when I'm booking meetings in now, quite often it'll come up, can you make this meeting shorter? Can you give the recipient a 15-minute break? Things like that.
Yeah, that's really good.
I think that is so much helpful. And I think we've covered so many great ideas there for that toolkit. So I think we can have a little look at some examples of the tools in practice.
Absolutely. So I have got an example here. We've got an example of an autistic worker. They're finding things difficult to switch between tasks during the working day. So when one task's ended and another one needs to start, their focus starts to drop sharply. It leads to delays, frustration, feeling like they're a mental overload. So by the afternoon, their energy levels are low and their productivity's fallen away. What they can start to do then is look at introducing scheduled blocks of time, for example. So different types of tasks, and instead of switching them frequently in the day is divided into clear sections.
Brilliant.
So they're looking at the focused work, emails, and then meetings. So each block has a clear start and end point. This helps dopamine in a few different ways. It's knowing exactly when your task is coming to an end. So it helps with that switching because you don't have that uncertainty.
I really like that one.
You're completing a set block of work and that helps with that feeling of progress. So you've got that kind of visual almost of that progress coming through. And then you've got fewer task switches as well, so you're reducing that mental fatigue. So over time, productivity might improve, the worker is able to stay focused for longer, and that transition feels more manageable for them. And then they get more stable energy levels across the day. So then their confidence increases and work feels more achievable rather than feeling overwhelmed. So they have like a small structured changes, which can all help dopamine and help reduce that cognitive load. So that helps the autistic worker be more effective without changing their ability and effort. And of course, they can link those different tasks up with either the music or the podcast, whatever kind of works with them as well.
Yeah, I think that's great, because how often do you switch tasks so often that nothing gets done? You walk away. And I love adding the music. I am really, really into, actually, I heard that it's music without words that help the best. So if I want fast pace, I have actually put the Super Mario theme tune on.
Have you?
And it really helps.
Love that.
And then if I want calm and relaxing, I found like some nice little Mozart videos.
Nice.
And it does actually really help. Even though I'm not into that kind of music, it gives my brain that flow and focus. Yeah. But another example as well, as I had an ADHD manager, so that's your autism and your ADHD, notice a repeating pattern within work. So they would enter periods of intense hyperfocus, working for those long stretches with high output. And while this feels really, really productive in the moment, it often follows with exhaustion, that reduced concentration, and obviously eventually burnout. And recovery time was getting longer, and energy levels were becoming increasingly unstable, which obviously, like we said, burnout's going to have that massive effect on mental health. So using the toolkit and some kind of strategies that had been discussed, this person was able to introduce planned task rotation. So across the day and the week, they focused on this planned task rotation. So instead of staying on one task extended periods of time, the work was intentionally rotated between high focus tasks, lighter administrative work, and then people-based activities. Transitions were planned rather than forced fatigue. And obviously this change supported the dopamine regulation in several different ways. So obviously the task rotation reduced prolonged dopamine spikes, which links to your hyperfocus. And then obviously helping prevent that sudden drop in energy, because once it goes high, the higher you go, the lower you drop. And knowing that change was coming made it easier to step away from intense work without feeling disrupted. So each completed task creates a sense of progress, supporting motivation without punishing the brain and pushing it into overdrive. And obviously this isn't an instant fix. Your body needs to get used to these changes. So as a result, energy levels stabilised, productivity became consistent rather than intense and unstable. And then obviously the manager was able to lead more effectively, felt less depleted at the end of the day, and experienced fewer burnout cycles. So the example shows how using task rotation as a productive strategy can support dopamine balance, protect the energy, and obviously enable ADHD managers to work sustainably without reducing performance expectations.
So we've covered a lot of different ideas and tools to kind of help you in the workplace. And I hope from this you'll see that dopamine isn't about laziness, it's not about discipline, it's not about trying harder, it's about how your brain activates motivation.
And that is different for everyone. I can see that some strategies will work for one people, some won't work for others. And it's getting your body into those routines. So don't just do it once and think, oh, that didn't work, it's rubbish. Give it about a week of repetition and practice and really going for it. Because once we understand dopamine, we stop blaming, we start designing environments, and we start supporting different brains. Doing that research around dopamine, you can see so many differences and so many ways to support yourself. You know, do I need a quick dopamine buzz? Do I need to actually slow that release down? And that's what neurodiversity is all about. You know, it is about that change in it. So we're glad that people are still listening to our podcasts. We're really enjoying making them. So thank you for listening to Send It. I'm Steph.
And I'm Claire. And if you've enjoyed today's episode, share it with your team, your workplace, or someone who's ever said, I want to do it, I just can't get started.
And we absolutely love the feedback, so please keep giving us it. Thank you.
Podcast disclaimer: the views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this podcast belong solely to the hosts. We are not experts, specialists, or professionals, and nothing we discuss should be taken as advice. Our conversations are based around our own experiences, ideas, and perspectives. They are intended for general discussion and entertainment only. If you need guidance, support, or advice, whether professional, personal, medical, legal, financial, or otherwise, please seek help from a qualified professional. By listening to this podcast, you understand and agree that the hosts are not responsible for any actions you choose to take based on what you hear.